Hi, I'm Jonathan M0JSX, and a number of years ago, Yaesu discontinued this, the Yaesu FT-8900R, which I think we can all agree is almost a universally loved radio. This radio, along with the FT-8800, which was the 2 meter and 77s version of this radio, this being the quad band version, have got a bit of a cult following. They are loved. I've got one. I would never think about selling this just for the fact that it is so versatile. Why is it versatile? Well, I think partly because it has a remote detachable head, but also it works really nicely. It's full duplex. It has crossband repeat. It's 50 watts out on 2 meters, 6 and 10 in the case of this particular version, 35 watts out on 77s. And since it left the market, since Yaesu decided they could no longer manufacture the 8900, nothing has really come along to replace it, either by Yaesu or by any other manufacturer. However, Retevis are trying to change that. Retevis have just launched this, which is their new, last few months anyway, MA1, and it has a few features which are pretty similar to what we see on the 8900, and a few things that it does a little bit differently as well. Again, fitting that bill as a sort of very versatile radio, the head unit does come off this as well, so fits that bill, has full duplex, also has dual receive and crossband repeat. So a lot of those features are ticked, but does this really meet the expectations that you might have over this? And when you can pick one of these up on a used market now for possibly a bit cheaper than one of these, which should you go for? Now, right off the bat, I want to thank Retevis for sending me the MA1 for review. I have enjoyed using it, and although in this video I am going to consciously and sometimes subconsciously be comparing it to the FT-8900 because that's a very similar radio that I have recent experience of, I will say now that if you are after a dual band radio that has crossband repeat, that has full duplex, that's 50 watts out on 2 meters, 77 has 40 watts out, that has a detachable front panel, that you can plug a microphone into the front panel, the MA1 pretty much fits that bill. Prices of these have been doing something a bit weird. The RRP, if you can believe it, is $439. Now realistically, they've never sold it for that price. Currently, at time of recording, they're on the Retevis website at $239, which I think is slightly more expensive than it should be. I see this being a perfect radio at about £200. And yeah, $239, £200 is pretty similar. That's where I see this radio being. Particularly when you can pick up used FT-8900s for a similar price. Now, don't get me wrong, the MA1 has features not present in the FT-8900, and hopefully I'll touch upon those in this review. Let's start by going over to the bench and having a look around the radio and also what you get with it. Okay, so before we get to the radio, let's just have a quick look at what else comes in the box. Now, obviously it's supplied with a microphone, as you would expect. Also supplied with a power cable, which is the T-type. Obviously I've put some power pole connectors on the end of this cable, yeah, was supplied unterminated with just some tinned wire ends. Obviously that T-connector we've seen other manufacturers use. We've seen Retevis use it before as well on the RT95, and I'll link a video of my review up there. But let's have a look at what else comes in the box, and I'll just grab it and bring it in. So here's the box it's shipped in. It's a pretty standard brown box that has Retevis written over it, and in here we can find there is a user manual, which is pretty good, to be honest with you. It does show you how to use most of the functions of the radio. And under here, a few more accessories which I haven't bothered to get out of the box. A number of sticky pads, good if you wanted to mount the radio in your vehicle. Also in here is a little microphone clip, some mounting hardware as well. There is a little bracket in order to hold the front panel if you did want to mount it. What I like here is that there is a standard tripod thread. So if you wanted to mount it on a tripod, you can. That might be a really easy way to mount it in your car. That's what I'm thinking. A pretty long extension cable. This is a 6-pin, so exactly the same as the FT-8900. I haven't tried to see whether this cable is the same as an 8900. I suspect it probably is. And then a mounting bracket as well. Pretty standard stuff there. We'll pop it all back in and we'll have a look at the radio. Sorry, one last thing before we do look at the radio. Is also supplied with a programming cable. Now, bizarrely terminated in a USB Type-C connector. This is not a USB-C cable though. This has still got a USB to serial chip in there. Can't remember which one it is. I don't think it's prolific, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not, you can't grab any USB-C cable that you happen to have and use it as a programming cable. You do need this cable. At least it's supplied, I suppose. So let's have a look at the radio itself. We'll start with the front panel, and obviously when we turn it on very shortly, we'll have a better look at what's going on here. But right off the bat, this reminds me, now Kenwood did a radio called the TMV71, which the front panel layout does remind me of a lot. Obviously there are things here that are pretty self-explanatory. VFO, memory recall, there's a VFO knob, buttons along the bottom, and there is, you might not be able to see on camera, there's some sub-functions when you press the function button and then press one of these buttons as to what that's going to do. Over here there are two volume controls for the left and the right VFOs, and then there's also proper squelch controls as well, which is a really nice thing to see. I have to say that I do prefer a proper manual or analog squelch control other than one you set in the menu system. That's a really nice touch. And again, very similar to both the TMV71 that this radio is very similar to, and also the FT-8900. So an N button here, which I think is for monitor from memory. When you press it, it defeats the squelch, and there's also an on-off button there. Move on to the right hand side, and we can see that there is a socket for the microphone. It's a standard RJ45 type connector, and obviously when you take off the front panel, that comes with the head unit. Just mentioning the head unit, it's really nice that you can mount the head either way up. So you can mount it upside down if you wanted to, and actually that's how it was shipped, with the speaker firing out of the bottom. Or you could mount it the other way up and have, if I can do it, there we are. So you can have the speaker on top. I suppose that if you're mounting it in the car, if you're mounting it as one unit in the car, then you could flip that around. Bit similar to what we see on the RT95 from Retevis, where you can spin the display the other way up. Yeah, nice that you can do that here. Moving on to the rear panel. We can see that there is an SO239 socket for the antenna, nice fan which kicks in when you're going to transmit, and then obviously where the DC socket goes into, and then under this flap here, which is marked with a USB logo and external speaker, which may or may not show on camera, not quite sure. You can see that Type-C connector, and there's also two speaker outputs for the left and the right VFO. And again, in the menu system, you can select where audio is going to. So if you wanted to send both VFOs into one speaker, you can do that. On the opposite side, is this the left or the right? Not quite sure. There is a second microphone socket. So, and this is really quite nice because the FT-8900 doesn't have this. So if you wanted to, if you were running this in a remote head configuration, you could plug the microphone into here, or you could get an extension lead if you needed to plug it into the main body. Where that might be useful is if you've got the main head unit maybe tucked up by your visor, or maybe somewhere at the top of the windscreen, having a microphone trailing out of that head and then obscuring your vision as you're driving, well, that's not so great. But obviously if you can have just run one cable up to the head and then a separate cable through to the microphone in the main body, that's quite useful. But I like the flexibility of also having the microphone connector on the head. When I used to run my FT-8900 in the car, in one of my vehicles anyway, I had both the 8900 and the FT-857, sorry. And the 857, similar story to this, where well, in fact, in that radio, you could only plug the microphone into the main body. You couldn't plug it into the head panel. So I had kind of the best of both worlds, and I did like with the 8900 that it was simple. It was just running one cable to it. So nice that you can do that here. On the bottom, just a big giant heatsink. What more do you want? Oh, and a sticker. Let's just read what the sticker says. It says that it is a Retevis model MA1 for UHF, VHF. It says here, confirms 50 watts out on VHF, 40 watts out on UHF, and supply voltage of 13.8 volts. Okay, so about to switch the radio on, and I found that this can be a little bit funny at times. If you press the power button a bit quickly, the microphone turns on as if it's going to switch on, but nothing happens. You press and hold that button, then of course it does come on. Now I have turned off all the tones on this radio. That's one thing I really don't like with radios, is all the tones that you happen to get. So I've switched them all off here. But when you initially turn it on when it's fresh out of the box, it makes a noise which is very reminiscent of an FT. Well, in fact, any OC radio, not just an 8900, but any radio. The screen itself, I'll tilt it up to the camera, is actually really quite nice. And in fact, if I just kill most of the lights in here, we can see that it's actually really nice to see in the dark. It is bright, but it's not too bright, and it shows you enough information that you need to know. So we can see at the moment we're listening to two repeaters. GB3RD happens to be on 2 meters, and GB3DI happens to be on 77s. And we can see that currently the PTT is set to the right hand VFO, but we can change that simply by pressing on the volume control for whichever VFO we want to select. So I've just plugged a dummy load in because I want to show you an issue that I found with this radio, and I know that a few others have also commented upon this, and I want to just show that it is an issue with either the firmware or the hardware. Something's going on with this radio which is causing this, and it's not a particular issue with with a particular unit. And it's this: if you press the PTT button, it takes a good half a second for the radio to actually go into transmit. And I'll try and show you now. So if I click the PTT button, see there's a good half a second. It's not quite as long as a full second between pressing the PTT and the radio actually going into transmit. I hope Retevis may fix this with firmware. I hope it is a firmware problem, because that's a bit annoying. Particularly if you're not looking at the radio. So because also if you look at the microphone, as soon as you hit the PTT, the transmit indicator does go red, but it's not in sync with when the radio actually goes into transmit. Now, realistically, if you know about that delay, you can adjust your operating style in order to take account of that. But if you are one that likes to pick up the microphone, hit the PTT and immediately start talking, well then there's a very real chance that the first syllable of whatever you're saying might be cut off. Okay, so what we're going to do now is I'm going to take off my microphone that I'm wearing and put it somewhere near the speaker of the radio, and we're going to transmit into my All-Star node, which I've connected to a Parrot server, just so we can hear what the audio sounds like.
This is M0JSX, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, M0JSX testing.
So I'd say successful in terms of how it sounds. Now this isn't going to be a full in-depth how to use this radio. I'm sure that other content creators on YouTube will do that. However, I do just want to quickly show you the memory system, which I haven't done there, which is a function, and then the main VFO. So you can change things like your step, you can change the modulation. This is receive modulation. It's only an FM transmitter. It will receive AM. It does include the airband on this radio. And then we've got lots of other features. So you can change the name if you're in memory mode. Lots of things here. I'm not going to go into them in any depth here, just to say they exist. If you wanted to program this radio from the front panel, you can do so. Let's just also just change that brightness. Let's just have a look at what it looks like a bit. Oh, that's just nothing. I have to say, on camera, that doesn't seem to be doing very much, but to my eye, it's marginal. Apparently there's auto brightness as well. Whether that works, I'm not quite sure. I've not noticed anything. You can change what the functions on the microphone do. Obviously that's where your full keypad is as well. I think I should have mentioned that. But radio's got the features that you'd expect it to have, as well as a few more, to be honest. So what are my final thoughts on the Retevis MA1, and ultimately, should you buy one if you're in the market for a FM only 2 meter and 70 centimeters mobile? Well, there are lots of options in that space for a dual band radio. For an FM, pretty simple radio, yeah, the Retevis MA1 is pretty good value for money. As I say, I wish that price would be slightly lower, somewhere around that sort of £200, $200 mark. I think when I first received this radio from Retevis, they were pricing it at $279. I say that price has come down. I don't know whether that price that they're currently listing at $239 is its final price, or whether it's likely to go back up again in the future. I don't know. It's also worth considering, though, that for the similar price to one of these, you can pick up something like an FT-8900. And I know that I'm not trying to draw direct comparisons between the two, but depending on the application, another radio might be more suited, particularly where this doesn't have any kind of data socket on the back. So if you wanted to play with the things like Packet, WinLink or APRS, well, then your only option is to try and get a cable into the microphone socket. And I'll be honest, I don't know whether there's any audio out on that connector. There probably is, which might make it a bit easier, but I'm not sure of that for certain, in which case then you have to route audio out of the speaker socket. Not ideal. Better radios, I would say, if you wanted to do data. Putting that aside for a moment, really reliably made. Nice aluminium or metal anyway chassis. It feels like it's got a nice reassuring weight to it. There are some imperfections when it comes to the moulding. I'm not sure whether this is going to show on camera. You can see there's like a line from the moulding. I'm not quite sure what's caused that. I noticed that as soon as I got it out of the box. It's nothing I've done to the radio. And in fact, if you look, the Retevis logo is printed over that particular sort of line on that face panel. Again, it doesn't affect the use of the radio, doesn't affect how it sounds or how it performs, but it does exist there. Again, my thanks to Retevis for sending this to me for review. I have really enjoyed using it. I am going to probably do what I do with all of my mobile radios and mount it to a chopping board. So it will be a radio that I can grab easily, in a similar way that I use the RT95 that I've currently got from Retevis as that radio that I can really just quickly pick up and put in the car. I don't have a radio in the car permanently. I fit it when I need it. So yeah, it might just become another radio that I do that with, and particularly useful for me because the 8900 I usually have on in the shack here, acting as an APRS digipeater. So that is not an option for me just picking up and taking with me. So nice. I now have got a dual VFO radio that I can do that with. Just need to buy a bigger chopping board than I use for the RT95. If you're in the market for purchasing one of these, and as I say, it's a really good option for a dual band FM mobile, there are some affiliate links down in the description below. Interested to know what you think of this radio if you've got one, or maybe you're in the market for a dual band mobile. What would you be buying right now? Answers down in the comment section below, please. If you've liked this video, there's a button specifically for that. If you haven't, there's another one that seems to work just fine too. And if you haven't already done so, please do click on that subscribe button and also click the notification bell and be told whenever I upload a new video. There's another video coming up over here that the algorithm thinks that you'll like next. Until next time, 73. Bye-bye.